Chapter 26. Trist, the City of Sin, 1. Luke was running for his life, gasping like a guy who just found out the gym isn't optional. Ugh, why is this happening? Probably because karma's a Luke. You know, after you killed 30 people and did other unspeakable things that would get you kicked out of any decent barbecue. But Luke was in denial, like someone checking their bank account after a wild night out. This can't be real. It has to be a dream, he thought. But nope. Reality was here, and it was chasing him down like it had unpaid rent to collect. Shadows crept in, smothering the alley like a bad Tinder date. Ah! Poor Luke dropped to his knees, praying to the goddess. But let's be real, buddy. That ship sailed the minute you decided murder was a fun hobby. And out of the shadows came Karnak, looking like the guy who always has that sarcastic remark. Really? You think you can call on the goddess after all that? He asked, with the kind of smugness reserved for someone who caught you sneaking the last slice of pizza. Luke, still not reading the room, tried to summon his evil spirits. You know, just casual things necromancers do. "Begone, vile demon," he shouted. Spoiler, it didn't work. Karnak, unfazed, just chuckled. Who are you calling vile? You're the guy who's basically a walking crime scene. Ever heard of irony? And so, Luke's once terrifying evil spirits fizzled out like a bad Wi-Fi signal. Karnak waved them off with the flick of a finger, like he was dismissing a bad waiter. Luke? He was devastated. My evil spirits? Barros, Karnak's sidekick, popped up, ready to pounce. Should I drag him there? He asked, like someone debating if they should haul the trash out now or later. Karnak, in full boss mode, replied, Yeah. Let's extract the darkness of the apocalypse as if it was just another Tuesday. And now for the torture scene, or as Karnak likes to call it, laundry day. Luke hung half naked over a tub of water, and you can guess where this is going. Dunk him, Karnak said, like a frat boy about to pull the ultimate prank. Poor Luke went in head first, gurgling like a guy who just found out that bottomless drinks wasn't the blessing he thought it was. Karnak wasn't even trying to interrogate him. No, this was just some twisted spa day. Dunk him again, Karnak ordered. And up and down, Luke went like the saddest, wettest yo-yo in history. Barros, watching the whole thing, couldn't help but feel a little off. Are we sure this is a good idea? He asked, like the guy at a bachelor party who's suddenly concerned about tomorrow's hangover. Karnak was unbothered. It's fine. We're not torturing innocent people anymore. Oh yeah, sure, because Luke's resume of murder totally makes this okay. Barros, ever the straight man to Karnak's chaotic energy, asked, what was his title again? Lord of Darkness, again, Karnak replied, rolling his eyes. How many Lords of Darkness could one city have? It was like a necromancer convention at this point. Dunk him, Karnak casually added, as if this conversation needed a soundtrack of Luke's drowning noises. After what felt like the longest waterboarding session in history, Luke's corrupt energy was finally rinsed out, leaving Karnak feeling fresh and squeaky clean. Luke? Yeah, he was dead. Who could have seen that coming? Karnak didn't care. To him, Luke was just laundry that was finally done. As Barros hauled the corpse away, he asked, So, how many more Lords of Darkness do we need to catch? Karnak did some quick mental math. About 20 more. 20 more Lords of Darkness. It was like trying to collect Pokemon, but a whole lot more depressing. Barros sighed. So, we're stuck here for another 3 months? Great. Just what I wanted. But then, as if flipping a switch, Barros' eyes lit up. Hey, I heard there's a place on Stall Street that makes killer noodles. And just like that, the dark, brooding atmosphere was gone. Karnak grinned. Yeah, let's go get some food. Because hey, even necromancer hunters need a good meal after a hard day of laundry. Karnak and Barros, still high on their upcoming noodle feast, headed back to their lodgings to freshen up. But before they could even take a step out, some random kid stopped them. Are you Baron Karnak? The kid asked, looking like the kind of messenger you'd want to tip, but also kind of want to punch. Karnak sighed. Yeah, what's up? The kid handed him a letter with all the grace of someone who just dropped off a pizza. Barros leaned over, curious. What's it say? Is there a fourth Lord of Darkness now? They seem to be multiplying like rabbits. Karnak's face scrunched up. Nope, it's Alias. He wants to meet up. Says he'll explain everything in person. Barros raised an eyebrow. Explain what? Another crisis? Apocalypse Part 2? But that noodle craving was strong, so the duo didn't rush. Walking through the streets of Derat City, Barros couldn't help but think back on how many necromancers they'd captured. It was like being on a never-ending reality show. Necromancers gone wild. So, how much darkness have we gathered so far? Barros asked, still doing his best to keep track of the world's weirdest collection. Karnak sighed, rubbing his temples. Let's see, 3 Lords of Darkness, 2 Sovereigns of Pestilence, and an OBD. Barros snorted. OBD? That sounds like something you need a doctor for. Karnak rolled his eyes. Yeah, well, he called himself one who befriends death, so whatever. The guy was basically emo with a necromancer's license. As they walked, Barros couldn't help but prod Karnak. So, what's the plan, genius? You gonna save the world and get a trophy? Karnak shot him a side eye. Don't be ridiculous. There are 3 ways to deal with the apocalypse. Option 1, I just ignore it and live my life like a regular guy. He paused, clearly considering it for a second. But let's be real, that ship sailed when I became the walking embodiment of chaos. Barros nodded sagely. Yep, you're too far gone for that. What's option 2? Option 2, I gather all the darkness of the apocalypse scattered around the world. Karnak's voice trailed off as he realized how absurd that sounded. Barros grinned. All of it? In this lifetime? Dude, you'll be a grandpa still chasing necromancers. Karnak groaned. Exactly. That's why it's not happening. I'm too old for this shit. He sighed deeply, as if carrying the weight of a guy who skipped leg day too many times. Which leaves option 3, block the source of the darkness. Barros looked confused, which wasn't unusual. Block the source? Like an apocalypse plug? Karnak facepalmed. No, genius. Think of it like clouds forming rain. The darkness is like rain, and the source is the clouds. If I can stop the clouds from forming, I stop the darkness from raining down. Barros blinked, trying to absorb that information like it was written in a foreign language. Uh-huh. And how exactly do we block these clouds? Karnak smirked. That's what I'm figuring out. But so far, it seems doable. Well, I guess as long as the Church of the 7 Goddesses is handling what's already here, we should be fine, right? He wasn't totally convinced, but hey, he was a swordsman, not a philosopher. After a brief pause, Barros asked, so how many more necromancers do we need to take down? Because I'm getting tired of Derat City. Karnak did some quick mental math. About 20 more Lords of Darkness, maybe a few Sovereigns of Pestilence sprinkled in for fun. Barros groaned. 20? We'll be here for months. I was hoping we could be home before the butler throws a fit. Karnak's butler was probably already planning his revenge for them missing their return date by, well, a lot. Karnak, trying to seem responsible, sighed. I should probably send a letter. Let them know we're going to be late. Barros snickered. What are you going to say? We're stuck fighting necromancers and might pop by the capital at some point. Karnak nodded, fully serious. Yeah, pretty much. I'll tell them that as a noble, I couldn't stand by while necromancers wreaked havoc. It's my duty to stop them. Yada yada. More excuses. Barros gave him a sideways look. That's what you call the truth? Karnak just shrugged. It's close enough. As they reached their destination, Barros decided to change the subject. So noodles? He asked, eyes gleaming with the hunger of a man who's been dunking necromancers all day. Karnak, who was equally starving, grinned. Noodles. And just like that, 2 of the most dangerous men in the city set off on their quest. Not for darkness, but for dinner. Chapter 27, Trist, the City of Sin 2. The Church of the 7 Goddesses, for reasons known only to them and maybe their accountants, classified inquisitors, priests with a vendetta against necromancers, into 3 different categories. Let's break it down. Rank 3 inquisitors? Ah, bless them. They're like interns. Fresh out of necromancer-hating school, they get the easy jobs, picking up corpses, because apparently there's a shortage of Uber drivers for the dead and cleaning up spooky vibes. You know, real lightweight stuff. Think of them like the janitors of exorcism. Ranked 2 inquisitors? These guys are finally allowed to leave the kiddie pool. They get sent to find necromancers, snoop around like detectives from a budget cop show, and report back to the church. Sure, they might have to throw a few spells if things get heated, but mostly they're there for the paperwork. Naturally, the church loses more of these folks than they'd like to admit. Turns out necromancers aren't exactly pushovers. Who knew, right? Then there's the big dogs, rank 1 inquisitors. Now, these folks walk around like they own the place. They don't just track down necromancers, they get to smite them on the spot. And they have church credit cards too. Yeah, that's right. They can make it rain holy water and hire adventurers without checking the balance. But let's be honest. Would you blow the church's money when you can get some glory-hungry noble to do it for free? Exactly. So why pay adventurers an actual coin when noble snobs will happily do the work for the price of a good reputation? Adventurers? They want that cash. Nobles? They want their family name engraved in the church's VIP list. Which is precisely why Alice, our inquisitor with a plan, had his sights set on Karnak and Barros. The church might be broke, but he had the next best thing. 2 guys who were out here necromancer hunting for free, driven by a tragic backstory and some unresolved trauma. Karnak's family was wiped out by a necromancer, leaving him with all the motivation the church needed. At 0 cost to them. A necromancer killed his whole family? Took his land? The man's probably burning with revenge. This is perfect. Because nothing says ideal candidate like deep-seated psychological scars and a thirst for vengeance. But hey, Alice couldn't exactly ask the ghost of Sir Randolph how he felt about all this. After all, the dead don't file complaints. Not anymore, at least. 3 days after the disaster in Gelpa village, Alice made his move. In the name of the Order of Hatoba, I humbly request your aid. Would you assist the Order in its holy mission while you're in Derat City? Karnak didn't even need to think about it. It would be an honor. Karnak of Zestrad pledges his full cooperation. Of course, Karnak was thinking. Free intel? Yes, please. Watching from the side, sent a magical DM to his boss. Sure, free info's nice and all, but is this really a good idea? Because here's the thing. It was standard protocol for the church to assign an inquisitor to any helpful outsiders, ensuring they didn't secretly start dabbling in the dark arts themselves. A priest breathing down your neck 24/7? That's just bad for business, especially when you've got necromantic skeletons in your closet like Karnak and Barros did. Won't we have some pious babysitter with us, young master? Barros asked, clearly worried his weekends of soul siphoning were over. But Karnak? Cool as a cucumber. I did some research. They're understaffed. Can't spare inquisitors for every little mission. Basically, the church was overwhelmed. They'd been hit hard by the darkness of the apocalypse. Yes, it sounds like the title of a death metal band, but it's a real problem. As a result, they were handing out information like Halloween candy and letting outsiders handle the dirty work. Unless things got super serious, it was pretty much a figure-it-out-on-your-own situation. So, no priest? Barros asked, catching on. Exactly. And as if Alice had heard their inner monologue, he added, due to recent events, we can't assign an inquisitor to every case, but we'll provide you with ample holy water, charms, and all the supplies you need. I'm confident in your abilities. Karnak and Barros couldn't believe their luck. Holy water and charms for free, and no watchdog? This was like finding out the minibar in your hotel room is complimentary. Alice, oblivious to their excitement, thought to himself, what a noble soul Karnak is. How was someone like him ever known as a good-for-nothing? Clearly, the man had never heard the saying, good things come in shady packages. As they strolled through the bustling streets of Derat City, Barros couldn't help but reflect on their recent chat with Alice. He said they couldn't assign an inquisitor unless it was a big deal, right? Barros asked. Yep, Karnak replied, doing his best impression of a man who didn't care about anything. And so far, he's only sent us info through letters. But this time it's different. No necromancer rumors, just a request for a face-to-face meeting. Feels secretive. That it does, Karnak agreed. Maybe something big is going down. Barros frowned. You sure about this, young master? If it's a major incident, they might stick an inquisitor with us. Or worse, Alice might show up himself, ready to take charge. Karnak just grinned. Or it could be something really good. Why else would he insist on meeting us unless it's big? The man had a point. In their line of work, the bigger the disaster, the bigger the payday. And speaking of big things, Karnak was already daydreaming as they neared the Hatoba temple. We might bag 10 Lords of Darkness in one go, he said, a gleam in his eye. Once inside the temple, Karnak and Barros were greeted warmly by Alius, but there were two unexpected guests in the room. One looked like your typical mage, mid-30s in robes. The other, a striking athletic woman in light armor, oozing confidence. Karnak shot Alius a suspicious look. And they are? The robed man introduced himself. It's an honor to meet the famous Baron Karnak and Sir Barros. I am Liltane, a sixth circle mage. Barros, ever the actor, gave a polite nod. Ah, High Mage Liltane, a pleasure. Meanwhile, he whispered to Karnak, You know this guy? Yeah, remember? He's the one who's beaten us to the punch twice on those necromancer hunts. Now it all clicked for Karnak. Liltane was a rival, a mage who had hunted down more necromancers than Karnak. 8 necromancers, to be exact. But Karnak wasn't about to let that slide. Still, Liltane, ever the diplomat, was impressed by them. I heard you two took out 6 necromancers in less than 2 months. Impressive. Karnak, playing the humble hero, shrugged. We got lucky. The woman beside Liltane stepped forward next. My name is Sarati Allen, Adventurers Guild. Karnak raised a brow. Sarati Allen, huh? This lady had a reputation. She was a prodigy who'd already awakened her battle aura, a skill most knights only dreamed of, and she wasn't even 21 yet. To put it bluntly, she was a badass. Of course, Karnak had to give her the proper respect. Ah, Lady Sarati, your reputation precedes you. Karnak and Barros exchanged glances before taking their seats across from Alius, Liltane, and Sarati. The room fell silent, the tension thickening as everyone waited for Alius to speak. Allow me to get straight to the point, Alius began, his voice low and somber. A major necromancer operation has been uncovered in Trist, the city of Sin. Barros raised an eyebrow. Trist? That sounds fun. Karnak shot him a look before turning back to Alice. And what exactly does this operation entail? Alice sighed, clasping his hands on the table. We've received intelligence that a gathering of necromancers is happening soon, on a much larger scale than anything we've seen before. We suspect they're part of a group tied to the darkness of the apocalypse. At this, Barros straightened in his seat. Karnak's expression remained calm, but his eyes betrayed a spark of interest. Liltane chimed in. The church has been tracking their movements for months, but only now have we confirmed their location. They're planning something big, though we don't yet know the specifics. What we do know is that if they succeed, the consequences could be catastrophic. Catastrophic how? Karnak asked. Sarati leaned forward. According to the reports, they're after something called the Heart of Trist, some ancient artifact that's been sealed away for centuries. If the necromancers get their hands on it, they could potentially raise an army of the dead powerful enough to wipe out entire cities. Barros whistled. An army of the dead, huh? Sounds like a party. Karnak ignored him, his mind racing. And you want us to stop them? Precisely, Alius replied. We can't afford to let this happen. That's why we've gathered the best of the best. He gestured toward Liltane and Sarati. With your combined skills, we have a real chance of preventing this disaster. Barros leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. So we're up against a bunch of necromancers, some ancient artifact, and possibly an army of the dead. Sounds like a suicide mission. Karnak chuckled softly. Isn't that what we signed up for? Barros smirked. Yeah, I suppose so. Alice stood up, his expression resolute. This mission is of the utmost importance. If you succeed, you will be handsomely rewarded, not just with gold, but with the church's highest honors. But if you fail, well, let's just say the world will be a very different place. Karnak nodded slowly. We'll do it. Barros sighed dramatically. Well, it's not like we had any other plans, right? Alice smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Thank you. You're doing the world a great service. Liltane stood up as well, his eyes scanning the room. We leave tomorrow at dawn. Be prepared. As Karnak and Barros stood to leave, Sarati caught Karnak's gaze. I look forward to seeing what you're capable of, she said with a small smile. Karnak smiled back, though his eyes remained sharp. Likewise. With that, the two of them left the room, stepping out into the cool evening air. Barros glanced at his companion. So, Trist, huh? The city of sin. I've heard the brothels there are top-notch. Karnak rolled his eyes. We're not going there for that. Barros shrugged. Hey, I'm just saying. If we're going to save the world, might as well have some fun while we're at it. Karnak didn't respond, his mind already turning over the details of their upcoming mission. Something about this felt off. The timing, the scale of the operation, the secrecy surrounding it all. But there was no turning back now. Get some rest, Karnak finally said. We'll need all the strength we can muster for what's coming. Barros yawned. Yeah, just wake me up when it's time to fight. As they made their way back to their quarters, the city around them bustled with life, oblivious to the impending doom that loomed on the horizon. Tomorrow, they would enter Trist, the city of sin, and nothing would ever be the same again. Welcome to Trist, the city of sin. If you thought your Monday morning was bad, wait until you hear about this place. A city where even hell would swipe left, and every corner has more drama than your average soap opera. The Seven Kingdoms Alliance, nestled in the continental west, seemed like your typical medieval political nightmare. Among them, you had the Eustil Kingdom up north and the Tarim Kingdom in the northwest, both looking at each other like two neighbors fighting over who gets to park where. And smack in the middle? Trist City, prime real estate, ripe for chaos. Cue the chaos. Originally a neutral buffer zone between the two kingdoms, Trist City was created when the kingdoms were tired of knocking each other's teeth out. They slapped a title on a couple of noble families through a politically arranged marriage, called it Count Trist, and hoped it would keep everyone in check. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Because guess what? Trist City sat on a river that was basically a money printing machine. Trade routes, commerce, you name it. And just like that, everyone and their mother suddenly wanted a piece of the action. Too bad the House of Trist had the power of a wet noodle. Yeah, they were about as intimidating as a kitten trying to guard a steak. With both kingdoms not wanting to set off World War Medieval again, Trist City became a no man's land. Criminals, smugglers, and of course, people trying to play King of the Mountain took over. Soon enough, the city got a new PR campaign. City of Sin, Outlaws have Paradise. Hell on Earth. Take your pick. Now we get to the fun part. Two rival families vying for control. House Ranpelt and House Flad. Think of them as the medieval mob, duking it out over who gets the biggest slice of this corrupt pie. Both claimed they were legit heirs to House Trist, but honestly, no one cared about their blue-blooded excuses. The kingdoms didn't care either. Just wanted someone who could handle business without, blowing the whole place up. Enter necromancers. Stage left. Because what's a city spiraling into chaos without a little darkness of the apocalypse thrown into the mix? These necromancers came slithering into Trist like rats to cheese, and of course, it didn't take long for them to start stirring up trouble. House Flad, the overachievers that they were, thought, why not recruit these guys? Necromancers love dead bodies, and we have a booming business in, well, the dead and the not-so-willingly alive. But the moment they teamed up with these creeps, House Ranpelt was like, oh, no, you don't get to play with the dead without a permit. They took their grievances straight to the Order of Hatoba, which was like the religious police, and said, look, these guys are playing with really bad magic. The Order showed up, torched House Flad faster than you could say unholy barbecue, and boom, House Ranpelt declared themselves the victors of this macabre WrestleMania. But before Sarati, one of our main players, could settle into a nice cup of justice, Alice, the explainer of all things shady, dropped a little truth bomb. Plot twist. Ranpelt won, but guess what? They're probably into necromancy too. Sarati, what the actual hell? Yep, turns out these guys played a genius move. Got the church to wipe out their enemies while they were playing with necromancers behind closed doors the whole time. It's like if Batman hired the Joker to take out Two-Face and then pretended to be Gotham's golden boy. Ranpelt's been cozying up to the church, playing the good guys while throwing shade at Flad. Meanwhile, they've got their own dark arts party happening behind the scenes. Liltane, our resident mage with a side of sass, chimed in with disbelief. So, let me get this straight. They're pointing fingers at necromancers while secretly practicing necromancy themselves? And no one in the church thought to, double check? It's like no one ever thought of turning the lights on. Karnak, master of keeping a poker face, joined in, pretending to be just as shocked as everyone else. Wow, necromancers, huh? Real scumbags. Meanwhile, Barros, sweating buckets next to him, was barely keeping his own secrets from leaking out faster than a broken faucet. Mission briefing time. Alice, now putting on his best serious authority voice, gathered the crew for their next mission: infiltrate Trist City, dig up the dirt on House Ranpelt, and expose their necromancy shenanigans. The problem? The Order of Hatoba had already cleared Ranpelt of wrongdoing, which made investigating them tricky. They needed to be sneaky. If the word got out that the church had botched things this badly, their rep would go down faster than a cheap bottle of wine at a tavern. And it's not just their reputation on the line. Without trust, no one would help them take down these dark wizards, meaning more innocent people would get caught in the crossfire. Oh, and to make things even spicier, previous teams sent to investigate Ranpelt had straight up vanished. Yeah, poof, like they never existed. That wasn't exactly filling the room with confidence. And just when you thought this couldn't get messier, it turns out that a mole within their own ranks, Bishop Shutraff, no less, might be helping Ranpelt cover their tracks. That's right. The guy who's supposed to be upholding divine justice might be handing out free passes to necromancers. So what's the game plan? Go undercover, infiltrate the city, and bust these necromancers wide open. Oh, and hope that none of them vanish like the last crew, because, surprise, surprise, Trist City isn't the kind of place that hands out refunds for missing people. Final note from Karnak, with a side of sarcasm. Looks like we're up against an entire city of shady mobsters who use dead people as playthings. So what could possibly go wrong? Sarati, ever the practical one, furrowed her brow. So let me get this straight. You want us to waltz into a city run by necromancers, crooks, and cutthroats, expose them for the dark magic-wielding hypocrites they are, and somehow not get killed in the process? Alice, pretty much. Great. Just another Tuesday, Sarati muttered. Meanwhile, Karnak, still looking like he hadn't been fazed by anything since the dawn of time, nodded sagely. Sounds like fun. I do enjoy a good stroll through the land of the damned. His calm demeanor was almost enough to make you forget they were about to walk into what was essentially a death trap. Alice, I'm glad you're all on board. We leave at dawn tomorrow. Dawn? Really? That's rather sudden. There's a reason for the haste. This isn't the first time we've tried to investigate House Ranpelt. Previous teams have, let's just say, disappeared. The room went dead silent. Not even Karnak had a quip for that one. Alice, lowering his voice for dramatic effect. These weren't rookies we sent out. These were experienced hunters. For them to vanish without a trace, it means Ranpelt isn't just playing around. They've got something big. Something dangerous. With an almost impressed tone. Well, isn't that something? They're better at keeping secrets than the royal court. Alice. Which is why we suspect there's a leak. Someone on the inside is feeding them information. And unfortunately, we think that someone is Bishop Shutraff. Cue collective gasps. A high-ranking priest in league with necromancers? Liltane. Guess you can't trust anyone these days. Even the guy handing out blessings might be handing out dark magic on the side. Alice, clearly frustrated, continued. We can't expose him publicly. It would destroy the Order's credibility. That's why I haven't informed my superior. This mission is off the books. Only us, acting under my authority as a rank 1 Inquisitor. So, no backup, no official recognition, and we're heading into a city where the last few groups ended up as ghost stories. Sounds like my kind of job. Exactly. We'll all act independently, going about our usual business. Once inside Trist, we'll gather in secret, find the proof we need, and bring down House Ranpelt from the inside. Oh, is that all? Just infiltrate a crime-ridden city, avoid getting caught by necromancers, and topple a criminal organization. Easy. It will be dangerous. But I chose each of you for a reason. I know you're all capable. And even if things go sideways, I trust you'll make it out alive. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew the stakes. This wasn't just a mission. It was a suicide run. But if anyone could pull it off, it was this group. Sarati. Well, I suppose it's better than sitting around polishing swords. Plus, who doesn't love a good showdown with necromancers? Nothing says fun like dodging soul-sucking magic. Let's just hope we don't become the next missing persons report. And with that, the group prepared for their journey into Trist City, armed with nothing but their skills, wits, and a mission so dangerous it made fighting necromancers look like a picnic. Because, as it turns out, in the City of Sin, even victory comes at a cost. Chapter 29, Trist, the City of Sin, 4. The following morning, Alias, Liltane, Sarati, Karnak, and Barros set out from Derat City as planned. To avoid drawing attention, they split into smaller groups, each traveling in a different direction: north, south, east, and west. They made sure to wear their priest's robes, mage robes, and knight's armor for all to see. Nothing says stealth like a full set of shiny armor in broad daylight, right? After half a day's travel, they changed course, reuniting at a prearranged location and shedding their conspicuous attire. "Time to blend in," Alice said, swapping his priest's robes for the unremarkable garb of a traveler. He even disguised his staff, attaching a few crude carvings to make it look as dull as his last relationship. It was easy for Karnak and Liltine. They only had to conceal their wands and shed their mage robes. Barros and Sarati, however, presented a greater challenge. Even without his armor, Barros's imposing physique screamed, "Trained warrior." Unable to shrink his size, he donned a laborer's outfit, trying to conceal his bulk beneath a large coat and a backpack the size of a small elephant. Seriously, who was he planning to feed? Sarati's beauty posed a different problem. While female peddlers were not unheard of, her attractiveness was in a league of its own, like trying to hide a diamond in a pile of gravel. Disguising her face was deemed too risky. In Trist City, someone might recognize her as a walking Instagram filter. Alice, ever prepared, had anticipated this. If we're going to attract attention anyway, he'd reasoned, we might as well give them a reason to be suspicious. So, Sarati found herself adorned in a bizarre ensemble, light makeup on her face and fine gloves on her hands, but clad in the drab travel clothes of a commoner. She was the very picture of a noblewoman traveling incognito, or perhaps a rich lady who just stepped out of a fashion magazine gone wrong. I've never put this stuff on my face before," Sarati said, her fingers touching her cheek as if the makeup felt alien. Liltane chuckled. "Indeed. This way, even if we raise eyebrows, it won't be an issue. They'll just think you're an art project gone rogue." To the untrained eye, they were simply peddlers. To the discerning observer, they were a group disguised to protect a noblewoman with a story to tell. Either way, their true identities remained hidden. Thus disguised, Karnak's party set their course northwest toward Trist City. As they navigated the mountain path, Barros grumbled, "Traveling on foot will take ages. I thought we were in a hurry, not a walking tour." "My apologies," Alice said with a contrite nod. "Riding horses would draw far too much attention." Because nothing says, "Look at me," like a knight galloping through town with armor clanking like a wind chime in a hurricane. Horses were expensive creatures. Simply riding one would mark them as someone of means. Disguised as commoners, they had to endure the hardships of their assumed station: blisters, sore muscles, and no horses to blame when things went wrong. To Alu's surprise, Karnak didn't seem fazed. "It's not so bad, is it?" Karnak remarked. In his previous life, Karnak wouldn't have been caught dead engaging in anything physically demanding. He had even declared, "I'm just not built to sweat, no matter how much I exercise." Yeah, his idea of sweating was lifting a spoonful of ice cream to his mouth. How sedentary had he been to believe such a thing? To his past self, the physical body was nothing more than a cumbersome obstacle, a trivial curse hindering his mental pursuits. It was no wonder he so easily embraced becoming an undead. No exercise required. But things were different now. "Oh, my precious body. I must cherish and own it," Karnak regularly thought to himself. He'd gone from couch potato to fitness guru faster than you could say snack break. Through consistent exercise, he had regained his health, and with it, a newfound appreciation for his physical form. He'd even come to relish the simple pleasure of a meal after a good sweat. So much so that he made sure to enjoy good food even on the road. "Right, let's eat," Karnak announced punctually as lunchtime approached, like a kid on a sugar rush. They gathered beneath a tree by the roadside and unpacked their supplies. An ordinary traveler's meal would consist of dried meat, biscuits, and the like, but ox-tongue terrine sandwiches with capers, pigeon roast with arugula puree and acacia fries, crayfish stew seasoned with white wine and pepper. From Barros's backpack emerged a feast fit for royalty, specialties from Darat City's finest restaurants. Every dish was utterly impractical for preservation and portability, a far cry from what one would expect to find on the side of a mountain path. Seriously, how much were they planning to carry? A Michelin star in their backpacks? Alice was flabbergasted. Anyone would think you only packed lunches, he muttered. You need to eat well to maintain your energy, Barros declared with the pride of a chef revealing their secret recipe. You didn't actually just pack lunches, did you? I did. Alice peered into the backpack only to find it overflowing with pre-made meals. It was a gigantic backpack, large enough to fit a grown man, definitely not your average lunch bag. What about a change of clothes? We'll wash what we're wearing. And what if it gets torn? We'll sew it back together. But your armor and weapons, I'm wearing them under my coat. I don't need to take them off. Right, because nothing screams casual traveler like a knight in disguise. But wouldn't it be too uncomfortable to travel like that? Delicious food gives you strength you never knew you had. Alice fell silent. Something felt off, but Barros's logic, however bizarre, was strangely compelling. It was like listening to a motivational speaker who was also a bit of a food hoarder. Sarati was equally speechless. We still have 4 or 5 days of travel ahead of us. Won't the food spoil? She asked, sounding like the responsible adult in the room. Barros, ever prepared, had that covered too. The young master cast preservation magic on it beforehand, Liltane gasped. You cast preservation magic on all this food? Preservation magic was a third circle spell, well within Liltane's abilities. Yet Liltane had brought preserved food because, goodness, it must have taken you more than a full day. Preservation magic wasn't an instant spell. It required a considerable amount of time to cast. For a sixth circle mage to preserve a single serving of food for 3 days, it would take a full hour of casting. That was why preserved food was still necessary even with preservation magic. Talk about meal prep. It's impressive, but did he really have to go that far? Liltane thought. Karnak replied proudly, effort is required if one wants to enjoy good food. Ah, yes, Liltane trailed off in response, still processing how someone could be so dedicated to food. In truth, it didn't take that long for someone of Karnak's level. I may be lacking in magic power right now, but my calculation ability hasn't changed, Karnak thought snidely. He could only use up to fourth circle spells due to his magic power capacity, but his mastery of magic itself had already surpassed even that of an archmage. He could cast a spell in less than 10 minutes that would take Liltane all day. If only he could cast a spell to make calories disappear too. Thanks to Karnak's efforts, the atmosphere was quite cheerful. Neither Karnak nor Barros were the type to be stingy with good food. Would you like some? Thank you. No one in the world can resist delicious food. It's the universal language, after all. Sarati accepted a sandwich with a grateful smile, taking the opportunity to observe her new companions. At first glance, they didn't seem particularly remarkable. A lord of a territory and his attendant knight, a common enough combination. Their skills were also quite good for their age, but compared to Sarati, an aura user, they were definitely average. And yet, they easily captured all of those necromancers? They had been in such a hurry to leave that she hadn't even had a proper spar with them, so she was curious about their true abilities. Just how strong were they? From what I've seen so far, they just seem like they're obsessed with food. Aside from mealtimes, it was an ordinary journey. Disguised as peddlers, Karnak's party continued northwest along Eustilia Road. 4 days passed, and they finally arrived at Trist City. Throughout the journey, Karnak couldn't help but think, City of Sin? What a dramatic name. He was no stranger to the slums of cities. Both he and Barros had spent time living in back alleys in their previous lives. Having experienced countless prominent cities across the continent, he found it hard to be. Here, everyone is a thief at heart, Alice continued, his voice low. The moment you let your guard down, you'll become a target. Even the strongest among you would struggle if they weren't careful. The environment here breeds cunning, not brute strength. Karnak considered Alice's words. It's a city where survival depends on intelligence and adaptability rather than power alone. He was no stranger to survival in harsh conditions, but this city was something else entirely. They moved deeper into Trist City, the atmosphere thick with tension and the pungent smell of unkempt streets mingling with the rich aroma of street food. Stalls lined the pathways, offering a wide array of goods, some legitimate, others blatantly illegal. Karnak eyed a vendor hawking what appeared to be stolen goods. How is that allowed? He wondered aloud. Here, everything is for sale if you have the right price, Sarati replied, her expression a mix of fascination and unease. It seems law is merely a suggestion. Barros nudged Karnak. Maybe we should get some of that rat meat, he joked, pointing to a vendor with a sign that read, "Fresh rat meat." Karnak chuckled despite himself. Only if it's grilled. As they moved on, a figure stepped into their path, blocking their way. A young girl, no older than 10, with dirt-smudged cheeks and an impish grin, eyed them with curiosity. "Are you new here?" she asked, her tone a mixture of innocence and mischief. "Just passing through," Alice said cautiously, glancing at the girl's hands, which were surprisingly empty for someone so young in this environment. The girl tilted her head, clearly unconvinced. "You don't look like peddlers. I can smell the fancy food on you." Karnak frowned. "What do you want?" "Just a bit of fun," the girl replied, her smile widening. "How about a game? I'll bet you can't catch me." Before anyone could respond, she dashed off into the crowd, expertly weaving between the people. Karnak instinctively started after her, his curiosity piqued. "Wait," he called out, but the girl was already gone, blending into the chaos of the marketplace. "Leave her be," Alice said, holding back Karnak. "She's not worth your time." Karnak stopped, panting slightly. "She could be a valuable source of information. Kids like her know everything about their surroundings." "Or she could be leading you into a trap," Barros said, crossing his arms. "These streets are filled with distractions. It's easy to lose sight of what's important." Karnak hesitated, torn between the thrill of the chase and the wisdom of his companions. "Fine, but we shouldn't ignore potential allies." With a resigned sigh, they continued their exploration of Trist City, keeping their eyes open for threats and opportunities. As dusk fell, the city took on a different atmosphere. The dimly lit streets were illuminated by flickering torches and makeshift lanterns, casting eerie shadows that danced along the cobblestones. Laughter and shouts echoed in the distance, mingling with the sounds of a bustling nightlife. "Let's find an inn," Liltine suggested, glancing around. "We need a place to rest and regroup." "Good idea," Alice agreed. "We can't stay out here all night." They eventually found a rundown establishment, its sign barely hanging on. The interior was dimly lit and smelled of stale beer and unwashed bodies. It wasn't much, but it was better than sleeping in the streets. "Let's hope they have food," Barros said, his stomach growling. Inside, they approached the bar, and a gruff-looking man greeted them. "What'll it be? We've got ale and, well, that's about it." "We'll take what you have," Alice replied. "And a room for the night." As they settled at a rickety table, a sense of unease crept over them. The patrons around them eyed them warily, whispering among themselves. "Stay alert," Alice whispered, his gaze scanning the room. "This place isn't as safe as it looks." The tension in the air thickened as they waited for their food. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted their thoughts. A brawl had erupted at the far end of the tavern, chairs flying and curses shouted. "Just another night in Trist," Karnak muttered, shaking his head. "We need to stick together," Sarati said, her eyes wide. "In a place like this, anything can happen." As they finished their meal, the brawl began to spill closer to their table. Barros stood, fists clenched, ready to defend his companions. "Stay calm," Alice instructed, his tone steady. "Let's not draw attention." But before they could react, a figure stumbled toward them, bloodied and bruised. "Help me," the man gasped, collapsing at their feet. The entire tavern went silent, all eyes fixed on the fallen man. Karnak felt his heart race. "What do we do?" Alice stepped forward, his priestly instincts kicking in. "Someone call for help," he shouted. The patrons merely stared, some with pity, others with indifference. The man groaned, clutching his side. "We can't just leave him," Sarati said, her voice firm. "He needs aid." Karnak knelt beside the man, assessing his wounds. "He's been stabbed. We need to stop the bleeding." As they worked to stabilize the man, the tavern's atmosphere shifted once more. Karnak could feel the weight of the eyes on them. "This city," he thought, unease settling in his stomach. "It's not just the crime. There's a deep-seated fear here." Let's get him out of here, Alus said, determination in his voice. We'll find a safer place to tend to his wounds. As they hoisted the injured man, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Who are they? Someone whispered. Fools, meddling in affairs that don't concern them, another replied, their tone scornful. Ignoring the comments, Karnak and his companions maneuvered through the tense crowd, each step further solidifying their resolve. Trist City was indeed a city of sin, but it was also a city that needed a glimmer of hope. And in that moment, they realized that perhaps they could be the light in this darkness, even if it meant putting themselves at risk. As they stepped into the night, leaving behind the tavern's oppressive atmosphere, Karnak took a deep breath. We'll find a way to navigate this city and make a difference, he vowed silently. They ventured deeper into Trist City, ready to face whatever awaited them in the shadows. Karnak and his companions strolled down the bustling street of Trist, a city that seemed to thrive on chaos. They witnessed 2 pickpocketing attempts and 3 robberies before they could even finish their coffee. In less than an hour, they had already observed 5 crimes, yet not a single situation warranted Alice's intervention. Seems like a day in the life of Trist, Karnak quipped. Unlike the inexperienced boy in the market, the pickpockets they encountered were practically artists at work. With the grace of dancers, they snatched luggage from unsuspecting victims, promptly handing it off to waiting accomplices before disappearing into the dark alleys, dodging flying daggers like seasoned ninjas. The victims, bewildered and frantic, gave chase, but the bystanders? Oh, they were as invested as a cat watching a bird just out of reach. Those guys are pretty good, one onlooker chuckled, sipping his ale. That's how you pickpocket, another nodded, looking almost impressed. Just as they had ignored the collapsed boy earlier, the crowd continued to gaze at the pickpocketing victims with the same indifference. No bloodshed, no cleric needed. The robberies were even more brazen. Hey, buddy, can you lend us some money? A thug asked, as if borrowing was the newest trend in fashion. In broad daylight, burly thugs were robbing peddlers in the open, not even bothering to take the action to the shadows. Ugh! The peddlers protested weakly, trying to defend their goods. You bastards! Oh, heavens! Why must you be indifferent to me? Cried one peddler, crumpling to the ground like a bad souffle. The robbers, with the finesse of ballet dancers, expertly avoided putting their victims in life-threatening situations. Just enough violence to send a message, and then they vanished, leaving behind only groans and empty pockets. Karnak raised an eyebrow. Wow, what kind of town is this? A free-for-all buffet of crime? He had been to many cities where crime ran rampant, but this place was a different breed of chaos. So this is why they call it a lawless city, Barros remarked, crossing his arms. Sarati looked worried. We can't just stay at any inn, can we? I mean, what if we get shanked in our sleep? Alice nodded, adopting a serious tone. I've heard that many strangers disappear without a trace like that. That's why we have to find a place with connections. Liltane frowned. So we have to set up a defensive barrier even in our room at an inn? This is ridiculous. Trust me, you'll be fine, Alice replied, though his tone suggested he'd have the entire room booby-trapped if he could. I have a place in mind, Mr. Liltane, Alice announced confidently. What? But I thought you said the Trist diocese was under suspicion? Liltane raised an eyebrow. That was the official story. Priests working outside always visited the local church. But the Order of Hatoba here was less trustworthy than a cat in a dog park. Yes, that's why I found another local collaborator, Alice clarified. Can we trust them? Liltane asked skeptically. In a city like this, trusting a collaborator felt like inviting a fox into a henhouse. But their questions were answered when they arrived at the central street. No way. Isn't this? Sarati murmured, staring wide-eyed at the large mansion before them. Flad Manor? You could almost hear the dramatic music play as they stood before the remnants of a family ruined by the Order of Hatoba. The exterior of Flad Manor looked like it had seen better days. No, to be exact, it was a rather old building that desperately needed some TLC. Karnak's Zestrad mansion was far larger and more impressive, but here, even a well-kept garden would feel like an extravagant luxury. Wow! The surroundings make it look good in comparison, Barros noted, eyeing the shabby yet somehow dignified structure. The city was full of patched-up buildings, and any place that managed to keep its paint on was practically a palace in this dump. It seems they still have quite a bit of power even though they've fallen, Karnak said with a smirk. He'd been skeptical about the reliability of a fallen family, but this was promising. Besides, they probably have a grudge against House Ranpelt, so betrayal seems unlikely, he thought, feeling a bit more optimistic. As they approached the mansion, Alice chimed in. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? No one we can trust more than House Flad right now. Isn't the Order of Hatoba also their enemy? Liltane countered, always one to rain on a parade. To be precise, the Trist Diocese of the Order of Hatoba is their enemy. We are here to bring them to justice, are we not? Alias reminded them, his voice dripping with confidence. Indeed, our interests align, Liltine agreed, though he still looked a bit skeptical. They cautiously headed toward the entrance of the mansion and encountered two gatekeepers. The duo looked about as intimidating as a pair of old chairs, confirming that the family had indeed fallen on hard times. What brings you here? One gatekeeper asked with a cautious squint. Alice, with a flourish that would make a magician jealous, revealed a brooch from his robes. It looked like a regular trinket, but the moment the gatekeeper laid eyes on it, he relaxed like a balloon losing air. This way, please, the guard instructed, ushering them inside. Candles flickered throughout the mansion, illuminating the faded grandeur as night fell. As they waited in the drawing room, a young woman in a simple dress entered, bringing a whiff of fresh air mixed with a hint of desperation. Welcome to House Flad. I am Sildella, the head of the family. She wasn't a showstopper by any means, more like the girl next door who could probably bench press a small horse. She looks like she'd be real mean in a brawl. She looks more suited for armor than a dress, young master. While Karnak and Barros took mental notes on her fighting potential, Alice offered a courteous bow. I am Alice, a servant of Hatoba. It is a pleasure to meet you, Lady Sildella. She was the daughter of Marad, the former head of House Flad, and it was said she had opposed her father's madness tooth and nail, earning herself a nice little vacation in a prison cell. I have no intention of making excuses for my father's sins. My goal is simply to restore our family's honor. Sildella said, her expression a blend of determination and pain. And to do that, I cannot tolerate the wicked Ranpelts, but our strength is lacking. Currently, House Flad was about as powerful as a wet noodle. The main forces involved in necromancy had been dealt with, leaving the remaining members in a state of confusion and despair. Even so, we still have influence in various parts of the city. If you will trust us, we will do our best to help you, she assured, her voice steady. Alice readily nodded. Of course we trust you. In this house, everyone left alive had a story of survival. The ones who even remotely dabbled in necromancy were gone. No more hanging out with the wrong crowd for these folks. Many innocent people had died in the process, but those who survived were fueled by hatred for the Order of Hatoba and House Ranpelt. Luckily, Alias's silver tongue did wonders for narrowing down their collective anger toward the Trist Diocese alone. The Order cannot stand idly by and watch the atrocities of the Trist Diocese. They will receive the goddess's punishment, Alice declared, his voice rich with conviction. After settling down, Alice shifted gears and asked, Now, can you tell us about the current situation? At this moment, House Ranpelt was on high alert. They were bracing for impact, naturally, as the Order of Hatoba had already sent a few well-meaning souls their way. The Order's usual tactic of disguising themselves and searching for evidence of necromancy will no longer work on them, Sildella explained, her tone serious. They wouldn't allow just anyone inside, only longtime subordinates got a pass. The Ranpelts were acting like hedgehogs, all prickly and defensive. Alius had devised a plan for a night raid. They would disguise themselves as a different group, attack the mansion, and shake things up enough to search for evidence of necromancy. It's a simple and crude method, but that's why there's a strong chance it'll work. That is, as long as we have the force to back it up, Alice said with a confident grin. To execute this plan, they needed to understand House Ranpelt's current strength. Sildella laid out a map on the table. Currently, there are about 100 soldiers stationed at the Ranpelt mansion. All of them are warriors at the level of rank 2 adventurers, and there are 3 second circle mages and 5 third circle mages. With forces scattered throughout the city, they were a real threat. Liltane's expression softened. In the heart of the Trist diocese, deep within the shadows of the Ranpelt mansion, Bishop Shutraf reveled in his newfound power. He had cultivated his dark magic through countless sacrifices, drawing strength from the tortured souls that languished in his basement. Each scream, each drop of blood, was a hymn to his insatiable hunger for power. Soon, he whispered, the shadows curling around him like a living cloak. Soon, the Order will send their best, and I will feast on their essence. The younger man, still apprehensive, couldn't shake the feeling of dread. But what if they come with a larger force? We've already lost many to their cunning. Let them come, Shutraf replied, his voice oozing confidence. The Order's arrogance will be their downfall. They think themselves the champions against necromancers, yet they are blind to the true darkness that thrives here. Meanwhile, outside Flad Manor, Alias and his companions were strategizing in the drawing room, the atmosphere thick with tension. Are we truly prepared for this? Sarati questioned, her brow furrowed with concern. If we misjudge their strength, we could end up like those poor souls in the basement. Karnak chimed in. We have to move fast. The longer we wait, the more time Shutraf has to consolidate his power. We need to hit them before they can fortify their defenses. Alice nodded, turning to Sildella. Do you have any insight into their recent movements? Any changes we should be aware of? Sildella hesitated, her fingers tracing the map. They've been on high alert, which means they might expect an attack. But what? Alice pressed. There are rumors of unrest among the lower ranks. The Ranpelts have had difficulty maintaining control since the Order's last raid. If we can exploit that division, we may catch them off guard. Then that's our angle, Alice decided. We'll create a distraction that forces them to split their forces. We strike fast and we strike hard. Back in the basement of the Ranpelt mansion, Shutraf's laughter echoed off the stone walls as he envisioned the chaos his machinations would create. I'll show them true necromancy, he declared, raising his hands to the flickering torchlight. And when the Order falls, we will seize control of this city and all its darkness. The young man nodded, his fear melting into a twisted anticipation. Let them come, then. We shall show them the power of darkness. The walls vibrated with their chants as the basement darkened further, shadows thickening, awaiting the inevitable clash that would decide the fate of Trist City. The next night, under the cover of darkness, Alice and his team made their way toward the Ranpelt mansion, cloaked in the shadows. They moved with purpose, relying on the intel Sildella had provided. Stay alert, Alias instructed, his voice low. We don't know what we'll encounter inside. As they approached the mansion's outer perimeter, they spotted the guard rotations. Liltane glanced at the map once more, calculating their movements. We'll wait for the guard shift change, he whispered. Then, we move in. The group settled in, hearts pounding, as they watched the guards change positions. The night air was thick with tension, and the scent of impending violence lingered. Inside the mansion, Bishop Shutraf sensed the disturbance before it reached the guards. A creeping sensation slithered up his spine, and his eyes narrowed as he turned to the younger man. Someone approaches, he said, his tone shifting to one of excitement. Prepare the wards. We may have company sooner than expected. What should we do? The younger man asked, panic creeping into his voice. Prepare a welcome for our guests, Shutraf grinned wickedly, his hands weaving through the air, dark energy swirling at his fingertips. Let them come. They will regret ever stepping foot into Trist. Back outside. As the guard shift completed, Alias led the charge. Now, he commanded, and they moved in unison, swift and silent. Barros took point, disabling the first guard with a swift, silent strike. The others followed suit, shadows merging with shadows as they infiltrated the mansion. They navigated the dimly lit corridors, instincts sharpened, sensing danger lurking around every corner. Stay close, Alice whispered. We need to reach the basement. With each step, the air thickened with darkness, the sense of foreboding growing stronger. They were nearing the heart of the Ranpelt's wickedness, and soon blood would spill. In the basement, the atmosphere grew heavier as Shutraf prepared the final ritual. Let the darkness envelop them, he chanted, his voice low and commanding. As he reached the climax of his incantation, the room erupted with energy, dark tendrils snaking across the floor. The captives, aware of their fate, cried out in terror as the shadows encroached upon them. But Alice and his team were already descending the stairs, determination etched into their faces. "This ends now," Alice declared, stepping into the chamber, his presence igniting a spark of defiance against the encroaching darkness. The confrontation was imminent, and the fate of Trist's city hung in the balance.